cruise cabin can make or break your vacation. Pick the right one and you're going to get great sleep, avoid noise, and love your trip. Pick the wrong one and you could regret it. Today I'll show you what to look for when you're choosing your cabin to make the most out of your vacation budget. And stay to the end and I'll tell you why I don't always recommend that automatic upgrade that some cruise lines offer.
Welcome to Suitcase Packed Will Travel, where smart, satisfying travel is what we do best.
First things first, every cruise ship is designed slightly differently. So whether you're booking your cruise through a travel agent, talking to a representative of the cruise line on the phone, or booking it yourself online, make sure you have a copy of the ship map, also known as a deck plan, with you when you're choosing your cabin. These can typically be found on the cruise line's website under a description of the ship, and sometimes it'll even be included when you're booking it online. Now, the first decision you're going to have to make when choosing a cruise cabin is what type of cabin you're going to choose. So an interior cabin is exactly that. It's on the interior of the ship. You're not going to have any natural light. Think of it kind of like a black box. And sometimes these are the smaller cabins on the ship. These can be great for your budget though, because they are usually the least expensive. If you're going to be out in the ship and you don't care about having natural light in your room, this can be a great budget option. Some people actually prefer them. My husband, for instance, hands down, he prefers an interior room. It gets very dark. It seems to be cooler. The little gentle rocking of the ship, it puts him right to sleep. Ocean view cabins are generally more expensive than the interior, but less expensive than a balcony. The advantage of these is that they're going to have some natural light and you're going to be able to look out and see the ocean. But obviously the windows don't open, so you're not going to be able to have any fresh air in the cabin. They are usually located on the lower decks, which does make it a little bit more stable, so you tend not to have as much rocking and rolling, but they are pretty far from the activity on the upper decks. And then of course there's the balcony. The outside balcony is typically going to give you more space, and obviously that balcony outside so you can kick back, have a cup of coffee, enjoy the view and the ocean breeze. Now, some ships have an interior balcony, and so they're going to look out instead of into the ocean, they're going to look out into the public spaces. They're still going to have a balcony, and so you're going to be able to have some natural sunlight, whatever comes in, but you're also going to be overlooking a lot of people, and because the cabins typically face each other, you're also going to have less privacy than those outside cabins. And you may end up with a lot of noise from the public spaces down below you. So when you're looking at a balcony, just make sure to double check whether it's an interior or an exterior cabin and look at the description so you know what you're in for. And of course, there are also the suites, which are bigger, more luxurious balcony cabins. And keep in mind that within these categories, there are subcategories. For instance, there's obstructed view balconies. And so what that means is that a portion of your view is cut off. It could just be a little sliver, or you could have 3/4 of a lifeboat in front of you. If you're looking to just have some natural sunlight and fresh air, an obstructed view may not matter to you at all. But if you're looking to have that kick my feet up, have a cup of coffee, and look out at the ocean experience, that's going to get dampened when you see the lifeboat in front of you. You can find out if the cabin that you're looking at is obstructed or unobstructed in the description. Now, ideally, especially with those obstructed view cabins, if you can go online to Google or YouTube and search for a video of that specific cabin, that's ideal because then you can actually see for yourself what's there and decide whether it's the right cabin for you. You may be offered a guaranteed cabin, and these are typically the least expensive in whatever category you're looking at. And that's because the cruise line gets to choose your cabin. They will guarantee you a balcony cabin, but they're not going to tell you where on the ship it is, and it may not be in your ideal location. It's a get what you get and don't get upset kind of process. And if you're okay with that, then this is a great way to save a little bit of money. But if you're particular and you want to be in a particular location, on a particular deck, or near somebody that you're traveling with, this is not a good choice. So now that you've figured out the category of cabin, you have to figure out where on the ship you want to be. And where your cabin sits is really important. Ships are described as forward, mid, and then aft, which is the back. So that forward part is the part that cuts through the ocean first. Usually that's where the anchor is. And that tends to have the most rockin' and rollin'. So if you are concerned about motion sickness, then that is probably not a section I recommend. Although ironically, a lot of the really expensive suites are up in the front, which I never quite understood. But then there's mid, so that's the middle of the ship. And if you think of a seesaw, the middle is usually the most stable. So that is also the most stable part of a ship. If you're really concerned about motion sickness, then trying to get a midship room is a good idea. And as far as motion sickness goes, the lower you go on the ship, you tend to have less movement. Middle, mid-lower deck in the middle of the ship is probably your best bet if that's a concern for you. Having said that, those are the most popular cabins as well. So the earlier you book your cabin, the more choices you're going to have. And then there's the aft, which is the back of the ship. And that's where the engine is. So that's where you may hear some humming or noise, but some people really like it and it helps put them to sleep. And so for some people I know, the aft is actually their favorite spot on the ship. For me, I prefer midship, and if I can't get something in midship, then I'll go aft, and forward's kind of my least favorite. But again, you have to pick your cabin based on your priorities. So everybody's going to have a slightly different take on it. Now you have an idea of what type of cabin and generally speaking where you want to be on the ship, forward, mid, or aft. Next, check what is above or below the cabin that you're looking at. I prefer mine sandwiched in between two rooms because it tends to give me the quietest experience. If you're below the buffet or the theater or above the nightclub, you may end up with some residual noise. And depending on how lightly you sleep or what your schedule is, that may or may not bother you. If you're a late night person, being above the nightclub may not matter at all. However, if you're an early riser, that could make your trip just a little less enjoyable. The next thing to consider is whether you want to have a connecting cabin. So you'll see that on the deck plan. There's usually a little line to represent the door in between the two cabins. Connecting cabins can be great if you're traveling with a family because you can split people up and give everybody a little more room. It feels like everybody has a little bit more privacy, and then you just keep that door unlocked and you can go back and forth between the rooms. If you're traveling by yourself or as a couple and you don't need that extra room, it's good to avoid that connecting cabin if you can, because generally speaking, you're going to get a little more noise from the room next door if you have a connecting cabin. It's very similar to a connecting room in a hotel room. You want to consider how close you are to the elevators and kind of the action of the ship. The more people congregate at the elevator or walking up and down the stairs, the more chances are you're going to have some noise if you're close by. However, it is really convenient, especially if somebody has some mobility issues and they want to minimize walking. Getting a room closer to the door can be a good idea. If you want to be near the elevator, I recommend going down at least a room or two if you can to try and just minimize that extra noise. Take a good look at that deck plan and see if you see any crew areas. I'll be honest, I don't feel like the cruise lines do a really great job of explaining where the cruise areas are on their deck plans, or certainly what happens in that location. But if you see a large blank space that's not taken up with rooms, I would assume that that is a crew area for one thing or another. And unfortunately, you can't know exactly what goes on there, whether that's the laundry room or a storage space. So just bear that in mind, that there may be some residual noise from any of the crew areas. Again, I've stayed literally next to a crew area and I didn't hear any noise. So I don't want you to get overly concerned about it. I just want you to know that that's something to consider. If you found this video helpful so far, we'd really appreciate it if you gave it a like, because that tells both us and the YouTube algorithm that we're giving you videos that are useful or entertaining. And that helps get the word out. And look to see if your cabin has any additional perks. Maybe early boarding or an exclusive lounge, complimentary bottle of champagne in your room, or even butler service. And check what benefits come with your cabin category and maybe the category above. Sometimes the price differential isn't as big as you think, and those extra perks are worth it for you. Now, let me tell you why I don't always recommend the automatic upgrade that cruise lines sometimes offer. You've gone through this process to find the best room for you based on your budget. The cruise line may offer an automatic upgrade. And on the surface of things, going from an ocean view to a balcony cabin sounds fabulous, especially if you don't have to pay any extra money. But that upgrade sometimes is just within the category. So you go from one ocean view room to another ocean view room that maybe is on something that they consider a better deck, but is not always in an ideal location. Or they upgrade you from ocean view to balcony. And again, they get to choose that balcony room. So you may not want to be under the theater because you go to bed early and you're a light sleeper, but you can't then call the cruise line and say, no, I want my ocean view room back. They have already moved you to a balcony room. And it's a little bit like the guaranteed cabin that we talked about a little bit earlier. It's kind of a get what you get and don't get upset situation. Now, of course, you could get a fantastic balcony cabin that you never could have afforded. And it could work out really well for you. The only thing is you don't know. So if you're super flexible, sometimes it's worth a shot and you will be very happy you did it. And if you're not particular about your cabin, then there's probably not any harm in doing it and you could end up with a better room. And let's say you're a family of 4 and you've got 2 connecting cabins. If you take that automatic upgrade, mom and one kid could end up in one spot and dad and the other kid can end up in the other. And again, you can't go back and ask them to put your rooms together. So if you want to do an automatic upgrade, just know what you're in for. It can be great for some people, but isn't for everybody. Choosing the right cabin really comes down to knowing your budget and your priorities. Is it quiet, location, convenience, the perfect view? Now you'll know what to look for when you're choosing your next cruise cabin. Thanks again for watching. This is Kathy from Suitcase Packed Will Travel. We'll see you in the next one.